Okay guys, so right now we're going to talk about solving more of these quadratic equations. Now last time we talked about solving things like x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. These ones had an x squared term, an x term, and a constant term. Today we're going to talk about something that's a little bit simpler. It's something that looks just like x squared minus 6x equals 0. There's no constant term. So for these types of things, we are going to factor them. So step one, just like before, make sure it equals 0. And step number 2 is factoring. But the factoring here is different from factoring like in this type of thing. In this type of thing, we had to circle the 8 and make a bunch of combinations and then find the one that added up to be that thing. It was kind of a lot of work. These ones today are actually going to be a bit easier, and I'll show you why. X squared is the same thing as x times x. 6x is the same thing as 6 times x. Now the thing they both have in common here is the letter x. So factoring is just the process of writing the thing they have in common on the outside, and then the leftover bit we're just going to chuck in here. And now the sign in between them is that same sign right there. So now we have this factored, and because that's equal to 0, either this number is 0 or that number is 0. Remember, if a times b is 0, either a is 0 or b is 0. So either that chunk is 0 or that chunk is 0. Okay, so let's look at each of those separately and figure out how to deal with them. So it could be the case that x is 0. We just write x equals 0. Or it could be the case here that that chunk is 0. Now, what value of x is going to turn this chunk into a 0? Well, 6 will. Why will 6 make it 0? Because if I replace this letter x with the number 6, then 6 minus 6 is 0, and that zeroes it out. Okay, so let's do another one really fast so you can get the idea here. It's really not that hard once you see the pattern here. Let's do this x squared plus 9x equals 0. Okay, x squared is x times x, 9x is 9 times x. They both have an x in common, and then the leftover is x, and 9 go in here. So my solutions are 0, and another solution here is negative 9. Negative 9 because negative 9 plus 9 is 0. So if I replace the letter x with that negative 9, then that would give me a 0. And if I replace this x with a 0, then 0 times that's going to be 0. And so 2 different ways of making it a 0 there. Now we can plug those numbers in and see if they satisfy this equation. Let's plug 0 in and see if it works. 0 squared plus 9 times 0. Yeah, pretty obviously, right? 0 squared, 0, everything turns into 0. What if we plugged in negative 9? Negative 9 squared plus 9 times negative 9. Well, negative 9 squared is positive 81. This is negative 81, and we got our 0 there. So both of these solutions, if you plug them back in, they're going to work. Okay, let's do another one. This one's for you to do. X squared minus 4x equals 0. All right, easy solution. X minus 4 equals 0. X could be 0 or it could be 4. Let's do something that you probably won't come across a ton, but it's worth going through. 5x squared. Let's actually do this. Let's make this tricky. Let's do 10x squared plus 5x equals 0. Well, 10x squared is 5 times 2 times x times x. 5x is 5 times x. Now, they both have a 5 in common. They both have an x in common. So if I factor this out, 2x is going to go in there, and here we're going to put a 1 in there, okay? And the plus, we'll put a plus there. So that's equal to 0. Now, because that's equal to 0, there's two different possibilities. It could be the case that 5x is 0, or it could be the case that 2x plus 1 is 0, right? Because whenever you have two numbers multiplied together to be 0, either that number or that number is 0. Now, the two numbers being multiplied are the number called 5x and the number called 2x plus 1. So it could be the case that the number called 5x is 0, or the number that's 2x plus 1 is 0. Now, we're not solving for this. We're solving for x. So we're not done yet until we have x equals something, x equals something. So here, let's just clean this up. 5x equals 0. We're going to divide by 5, divide by 5. 0 divided by 5 is 0, so x equals 0. That's one solution. Here, a little bit of algebra is required. I want to get x by itself, so I got to get rid of the 2, got to get rid of the 1. Easiest thing to do first is to get rid of that plusy minusy term first. Get rid of that plus 1 by minusing 1, minusing 1. That's going to give me 2x equals negative 1. Divide by 2, divide by 2. Those cancel. X equals negative 1/2. You get those two solutions. So that was a little bit more work, but that's about as hard as it gets.